The rain hammered against the windows of Miller's diner, like it had something to prove. October in Portland meant gray skies, wet streets, and customers tracking mud across the black and white checkered floor I'd just mopped 20 minutes ago. I didn't mind, though. The sound of rain had always calmed me, even on nights like this when my feet ached and my ex-girlfriend's texts kept lighting up my phone with demands about who got to keep the couch. "Sarah, table 6 needs a refill," Danny called from behind the counter, his voice barely audible over the clatter of dishes and the low hum of conversation. I grabbed the coffee pot and headed toward the corner booth, my white sneakers squeaking against the floor. The diner was half empty, typical for a Tuesday night. A few regulars sat at the counter, and a young couple occupied the booth near the restrooms, but most of the tables sat vacant under the harsh fluorescent lights. Table 6 held a woman I'd never seen before. She must have been in her 70s, maybe older, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, and dark sunglasses that seemed out of place indoors. A white cane leaned against the booth beside her. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded on the table, her head tilted slightly as if listening to something I couldn't hear. "Coffee?" I asked, approaching with the pot. "Yes, please." Her voice stopped me cold. My hand froze mid-pour, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. That voice, low and steady, with a slight rasp that came from years of cigarettes or maybe just age. I knew that voice. I'd heard it in my nightmares and my dreams for 15 years. "Miss?" The woman's head turned toward me. "Is everything all right?" I realized I'd been standing there like an idiot, the coffee pot hovering over her cup. "Sorry. Yes, I'm fine." I filled her cup, my hand trembling slightly. Black coffee, just like she'd ordered. She smiled, a small, knowing expression that made my chest tighten. "Thank you, dear." I set the pot down on her table and pulled out my order pad, trying to keep my voice steady. "Have you decided what you'd like to eat? The meatloaf special sounds lovely. And could I have green beans instead of the mashed potatoes?" "Of course." I scribbled the order, but my mind was racing. It couldn't be her. It had been 15 years. I'd been 17, standing on the Morrison Bridge at 2 a.m, ready to jump. And this woman, or someone with this exact voice, had been walking her dog. She'd talked to me for 2 hours, never once telling me not to jump, just talking about everything and nothing until the sun started to rise and I'd stepped away from the edge. I'd never gotten her name. She'd walked away before I could ask, her dog pulling at the leash, and I'd been too numb to follow. "Will that be all?" I asked. "For now, yes." She folded her hands again, her unseeing eyes aimed somewhere past my shoulder. "Though I do love the sound of rain, don't you? It's been so long since I could see it, but I can still hear it dancing on the roof." My throat tightened. "Yeah, I love it too." Back in the kitchen, I clipped the order to the wire above the grill where Danny was already flipping burgers. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. "You good?" Danny asked, glancing at me with concern in his dark eyes. "Just tired." The lie came easily. I'd been telling it for years, but I wasn't tired. I was electrified, terrified, and confused all at once. The woman at table 6 had saved my life, and she didn't even know it. Or did she? Had she recognized something in my voice, too? I watched her through the kitchen window as I waited for her order. She sipped her coffee slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. She wore a simple blue cardigan over a white blouse, and a silver cross hung around her neck. Everything about her seemed peaceful, content even. I'd spent 15 years wondering what happened to her, wondering if she remembered that night, wondering if she'd saved other people, or if I'd been the only one stupid enough to climb a bridge railing at 17, because my parents had kicked me out for kissing Amy Henderson behind the school gym. The timer dinged. Danny slid the plate across the counter. "Meatloaf for 6. I carried it out, along with fresh silverware wrapped in a napkin. My heart hammered against my ribs as I approached the booth. "Here you go," I said, setting the plate down carefully. "Meatloaf with green beans, as requested." "Wonderful." She unfolded her napkin with practiced movements. "Could you tell me where everything is on the plate?" "Of course. Meatloaf at 6 o'clock, green beans at 9, and dinner roll at 3. Perfect. Thank you, dear." She picked up her fork and cut into the meatloaf with surprising precision. "You have a kind voice. I've always thought you could tell a lot about a person by their voice." My breath caught. "Really?" "Oh, yes. Voices carry more than words. They carry intentions, emotions, whole histories sometimes." She took a bite and smiled. "This is delicious. Please tell the cook I said so." "I will." I lingered by the table, knowing I should walk away but unable to move. Have you lived in Portland long? All my life, actually, though I haven't gotten out much in recent years. My daughter usually does the shopping, but tonight I insisted on coming here. I used to love this diner back when I could still see. She paused, her head tilting toward me again. Do I know you, dear? Your voice sounds familiar. My heart stopped. I don't think so. Perhaps not. These days, everyone sounds familiar. It's one of the tricks my mind plays on me. She took another bite, chewing thoughtfully. Still, there's something about you. Something that makes me think we've met before. I should have walked away. I should have just smiled and gone back to refilling water glasses and pretending my world hadn't just tilted on its axis. Instead, I pulled out my order pad and wrote down my phone number. If you need anything else, just let me know, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Then, before I could stop myself, I added, and if you ever want to talk about anything, here's my number. I tore off the page and pressed it into her hand. She held it, her fingers tracing the paper with a confused expression. I can't read this, dear. God, I was an idiot. Right. Sorry, I just thought... I stopped, not knowing how to finish that sentence. What was I supposed to say? I thought you might remember saving my life 15 years ago and want to reconnect. She smiled, that same knowing smile. Tell you what, give me your number verbally, and I'll remember it. I have a very good memory for voices and numbers. So I did. I recited my cell number slowly, watching as she repeated it back to me with perfect accuracy. Sarah, I added. My name is Sarah. Margaret, she replied. It's lovely to meet you, Sarah. The rest of her meal passed in a blur. I checked on her twice more, refilled her coffee once, and tried not to stare. When she finished, I brought her the check, and she paid in exact change that she counted out from a small coin purse with the confidence of someone who'd been doing it for years. Thank you for the lovely service, she said as she stood, reaching for her cane. And thank you for the number. I might just take you up on that talk. I hope you do. I watched her walk toward the door, tapping her cane ahead of her, and felt something shift inside my chest. For 15 years, I'd carried the weight of that night on the bridge, the shame of how close I'd come, the gratitude for being saved, the questions about who she was and why she'd cared enough to stop. Now she was back in my life, and I had no idea what to do about it. The door chimed as she left, and I stood there in the middle of the diner, holding her empty coffee cup and trying not to cry. 3 days passed before my phone rang with an unknown number. I was sitting in my cramped studio apartment, eating cereal for dinner and watching the rain slide down my window when the screen lit up. My heart jumped into my throat. Hello? Sarah? This is Margaret, from the diner. I nearly dropped the phone. Margaret, hi. I'm so glad you called. Well, you did give me your number rather insistently. There was warmth in her voice, maybe even amusement. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. No, not at all. I'm just sitting here, watching the rain. Ah, the rain. It's been particularly persistent this week, hasn't it? A pause. I was wondering if you might like to meet for coffee sometime. Somewhere other than your workplace, where we could actually talk. My pulse quickened. I'd love that. Wonderful. Do you know the little cafe on Hawthorne? The one with the blue awning? Blue Moon Cafe? Yeah, I know it. Would tomorrow afternoon work, say 2 o'clock? Perfect. I was already mentally rearranging my schedule. I had a shift at the diner from 6 to 2, but I could make it work. I'll see you there. After we hung up, I sat on my couch for a long time, staring at my phone. What was I doing? What was I going to say to her? Hey, remember that suicidal teenager you talked down from a bridge 15 years ago? Surprise, it's me. The thought made me sick. I'd spent so long trying to bury that night, to pretend it never happened. I'd built a life, small and messy as it was, and I'd survived. Most days I even felt okay. But seeing Margaret again had ripped open old wounds I thought had healed. My phone buzzed with another text from Jennifer, my ex. You can't avoid this forever. We need to talk about the apartment. I deleted it without responding. Jennifer could wait. Hell, Jennifer could wait forever for all I cared. She'd been the one to cheat, the one to decide our 3-year relationship wasn't worth fighting for. If she wanted the couch that badly, she could have it. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying that night on the bridge in my mind, trying to remember every detail. Margaret, if it really was her, had appeared out of nowhere, walking a golden retriever that had started barking at me. She'd asked if I was okay, and I'd lied and said yes, but she hadn't left. She just stood there, leaning against the railing a few feet away, and started talking. She'd told me about her own life, about her husband who'd died young, about her daughter who was getting married, about how she used to paint before her vision started failing. She'd talked about ordinary things, mundane things, like they mattered, like the world was full of small, beautiful moments worth sticking around for. And somehow, without ever telling me not to jump, she'd convinced me to climb down. The next day, I showed up at Blue Moon Cafe 15 minutes early, my stomach in knots. The cafe was warm and crowded, filled with the smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls. I ordered a latte and claimed a table by the window, watching the door. Margaret arrived exactly at 2, tapping her cane ahead of her. A younger woman, probably in her 40s, walked beside her, helping guide her through the door. "Mom, are you sure you don't want me to stay?" the younger woman asked. "I'm fine, Rachel. Go run your errands. I'll call when I'm ready to be picked up." I stood and waved, then realized how useless that was. "Margaret, it's Sarah. I'm at the table by the window." She turned toward my voice, smiling. "Sarah, thank you for meeting me." Rachel helped her mother to the chair across from me, giving me a quick once-over that felt protective. "You'll call if you need anything?" "Yes, dear. Now go. You're making a fuss." After Rachel left, I helped Margaret order a decaf coffee and a slice of lemon cake, and we settled into an awkward silence. "So," Margaret said finally, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. "Tell me about yourself, Sarah. What's your story?" "My story?" I laughed nervously. "Not much to tell. I'm 32. I've been working at Miller's Diner for 8 years, and I live alone now. Just ended a long relationship. I'm sorry to hear that." She took a sip of her coffee. "Breakups are never easy, no matter how old you get." "Yeah, well, it was probably for the best." I stirred my latte, watching the foam swirl. "What about you? You mentioned you've lived in Portland your whole life." She nodded. "Born and raised. I taught elementary school for 35 years before I retired. Lost my vision gradually. Macular degeneration. It's been about 10 years now since I could see anything more than shadows. That must be hard." "It was at first. But you adapt. You find new ways to experience the world." She set down her cup and folded her hands on the table. "Now, why don't you tell me the real reason you gave me your number?" The question caught me off guard. "What?" "Sarah, I may be blind, but I'm not stupid. You were nervous when you served me. Your voice shook when you gave me your number. And now you're sitting here, stirring your coffee like it's a magic potion." She smiled gently. "We've met before, haven't we?" My throat closed up. Yes, a long time ago." "Tell me." So I did. I told her everything. About being 17 and scared and alone. About climbing onto that bridge railing and wanting everything to stop. About the woman with the golden retriever who'd talked to me for hours without once judging me or calling the police. About how that conversation had saved my life. By the time I finished, tears were running down my face. "I'm sorry. I know this is weird. I needed to thank you. I've wanted to thank you for 15 years. Margaret sat quietly for a long moment, her face unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "I remember that night. God, I remember it like it was yesterday." "You do?" "Of course I do. You don't forget something like that." She reached across the table, her hand searching for mine. I took it, her skin papery and warm. "I walked home that morning and couldn't stop crying. I was terrified you'd jump after I left. I almost called the police, but I was afraid they'd make things worse. For weeks, I walked that same road at the same time, hoping to see you again, to know you were okay." "I'm okay," I whispered. "Because of you." "No," she squeezed my hand. "You're okay, because you chose to be. I just gave you a reason to keep choosing." We sat there in that cafe for 3 hours, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her daughter Rachel, about her 2 grandchildren, about her life teaching kids who sometimes came from broken homes. I told her about my parents who hadn't spoken to me in years, about Jennifer and the failed relationship, about my dreams of someday opening my own restaurant. "You should," Margaret said firmly. "Open that restaurant. Don't let fear stop you." "I'm always afraid," I admitted. "Some days I still feel like that 17-year-old on the bridge, you know? Like I'm just teetering. Then you need to find your reasons to step back from the edge. Every single day." When Rachel came to pick her up, Margaret made me promise to call her again. "I mean it, Sarah. Don't be a stranger. I'd like us to be friends." "I'd like that too." Walking home through the drizzle, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight I'd been carrying, the shame, The guilt, the fear, felt a little bit smaller. Margaret remembered me. She'd cared about me then, and she seemed to care about me now. For the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe I wasn't walking through life alone. Over the next few weeks, Margaret and I fell into an easy routine. I'd call her every few days, and we'd meet for coffee, or I'd visit her small house in the Eastmoreland neighborhood. Her home was modest, but warm, filled with photos she could no longer see, and paintings she'd created before losing her vision. Rachel was always friendly but watchful, like she wasn't quite sure what to make of her mother's new friendship with a waitress 15 years younger. Mom doesn't usually connect with people this quickly, Rachel told me one afternoon when Margaret had gone to use the bathroom. We were sitting in her kitchen, sunlight streaming through lace curtains onto the worn wooden table. We have history, I said carefully. She mentioned that. She said you met years ago. Rachel studied me with her mother's same intensity. She's been different since she started spending time with you. Happier, more engaged. She's been good for me too. And it was true. Margaret had become an unexpected anchor in my life. When Jennifer finally showed up at my apartment demanding we split everything down to the last fork, Margaret talked me through it over the phone, her calm voice keeping me from completely falling apart. When I got written up at work for snapping at a rude customer, Margaret reminded me that one bad day didn't define me. "You're stronger than you think," she told me during one of our coffee dates at Blue Moon Cafe. The late October weather had turned colder, and rain battered the windows with increasing fury. That girl on the bridge? She survived. She built a life. That takes incredible courage. Some days it doesn't feel like courage, I admitted, watching steam rise from my mug. Some days it just feels like stubbornness. Margaret laughed, a sound I'd come to love. Sometimes stubbornness is all you need. The world wants to knock us down constantly. The brave thing is to keep standing up. It was during one of these conversations that I finally told her about being gay. I don't know why I'd avoided it before. Maybe some leftover shame from my parents' rejection. Maybe fear that Margaret would suddenly see me differently. But the words just came out one afternoon when she asked why Jennifer and I had broken up. She cheated on me. With a guy, actually. Turns out she decided she wasn't really gay after all. She was just experimenting. The bitterness in my voice surprised me. Margaret was quiet for a moment. That must have been painful. To have someone you love reject not just you, but a fundamental part of who you are. It is. I picked at my napkin, tearing it into small pieces. My parents did the same thing when I was 17. That's why I was on that bridge. They found out about Amy Henderson and told me I was an abomination. Said I couldn't live under their roof anymore. "Is that why you're afraid?" Margaret asked gently. "Why you keep yourself small? Because people you loved told you there was something wrong with you?" Tears pricked my eyes. Maybe. Probably. She reached across the table and found my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Sarah, listen to me. There is absolutely nothing wrong with who you are. Nothing. Your parents were wrong. Jennifer was cruel. But you are exactly who you're meant to be." It was such a simple statement, but coming from her, it shattered something inside me. I started crying right there in the cafe, big, ugly sobs that made other customers stare. Margaret just held my hand and let me cry, occasionally passing me napkins with her free hand. "I wish I'd had someone tell me that when I was 17, I finally managed to say. "I'm telling you now, and I'll keep telling you until you believe it." That night, walking home through the cold November air, I felt something shift. Margaret wasn't just the woman who'd saved my life once. She was actively saving it now, helping me piece together the broken parts of myself I'd never quite figured out how to fix. My phone rang as I was climbing the stairs to my apartment. Jennifer's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. "What?" "Sarah, She sounded tired. "I wanted to apologize. For everything. You deserved better than how I treated you." "Yeah, I did." The words came out harder than I intended, but I didn't take them back. "I know, and I'm sorry. I was confused and scared and I handled it terribly." A pause. "Are you okay?" The question surprised me. Was I okay? A month ago, I would have said no. I would have been drowning in self-pity and loneliness. But now, yeah, I said, and meant it. "I'm actually doing okay." After we hung up, I sat on my couch and called Margaret, even though it was late. "Sarah?" She answered on the second ring, sounding alert. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually. I just wanted to say thank you." "For what, dear?" "For being in my life. For giving me a reason to keep choosing, like you said." I could hear her smile through the phone. "You're very welcome." Though I think you're giving me too much credit. You're doing the hard work yourself. Maybe, but it's easier with you here. We talked for another hour, about nothing in particular. Margaret told me about her grandchildren, 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Lucas, who were coming to visit for Thanksgiving. I told her about Danny at the diner, who'd been covering my shifts when I needed time off without asking questions. He sounds like a good friend, Margaret said. He is. I'm lucky. You deserve good people in your life, Sarah. Remember that. After we said goodnight, I sat in my dark apartment and realized something profound. For the first time since I was 17, I wasn't just surviving. I was actually starting to live. The rain had stopped, and through my window, I could see the city lights reflecting off wet pavement. It was beautiful in a way I'd never noticed before. Portland had always been my home, but I'd spent so many years seeing it through a fog of pain and shame. Now, with Margaret's voice echoing in my head, telling me I was exactly who I was meant to be, the fog was starting to lift. I pulled out my old journal, the one I'd kept sporadically since I was a teenager, and wrote for the first time in months, not about sadness or fear, but about hope, about second chances, about the random miracle of crossing paths with someone who'd saved your life, not once, but twice. Margaret insisted I join her family for Thanksgiving. I won't take no for an answer, she said when she called me in mid-November. Rachel is cooking enough food to feed an army, and you shouldn't spend the holiday alone in that apartment eating cereal. I don't just eat cereal, I protested, even though she was right. My diet had been pretty pathetic lately. Sarah, her voice took on that firm teacher tone I'd come to recognize. You're coming. Rachel wants to meet you properly, and the kids would love to have another person to show off for. So on Thanksgiving Day, I found myself standing on Margaret's front porch, holding a store-bought pumpkin pie and trying to calm my nerves. I could hear laughter and voices inside, the warm sounds of family that I hadn't experienced in 15 years. Rachel opened the door, wiping her hands on an apron. She looked tired but happy, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. Sarah, come in. Mom's been asking about you every 5 minutes. The house smelled incredible. Turkey, stuffing, cinnamon, all the scents that were supposed to make a place feel like home. Margaret sat in an armchair near the fireplace. Emma curled up beside her while she read a Braille book aloud. Lucas was on the floor, building something elaborate with blocks. Sarah's here, Rachel announced, and Margaret's face lit up. Finally, come sit with me. Emma, scoot over and make room for our guest. Emma, a serious-looking girl with glasses and braids, examined me carefully before moving. Grandma says you're her friend. I am, I said, settling onto the couch. Are you a teacher too? No, I'm a waitress. What's a waitress? I bring people food at a restaurant. Emma considered this. That sounds important. People need food. They do, I agreed, liking this kid already. Lucas abandoned his blocks and climbed onto Margaret's lap. Grandma, tell the story about the dog. Later, sweetheart. Let's let Sarah get settled first. Rachel's husband Tom arrived from the kitchen, introducing himself with a firm handshake and a friendly smile. He was a tall man with kind eyes and flour on his shirt. Nice to finally meet you. Margaret talks about you constantly. All good things, I hope. Very good things. He gestured toward the kitchen. Can I get you something to drink? Wine, beer, soda? Wine would be great, thanks. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful. Emma insisted on sitting next to me and asked approximately 1,000,000 questions about my job, my apartment, and whether I had any pets. Lucas spilled his milk twice and got cranberry sauce in his hair. Rachel and Tom moved through it all with practiced ease, their partnership evident in the way they communicated with just glances and small gestures. Margaret sat at the head of the table, her unseeing eyes aimed somewhere in my direction, smiling as her family talked over each other. At one point, she reached out and found my hand under the table, giving it a quick squeeze. After dinner, while Rachel and Tom wrestled the kids into pajamas, Margaret and I sat on the back porch despite the cold. The yard was dark, lit only by the kitchen light spilling through the windows, and the air smelled like rain and wet leaves. Thank you for inviting me, I said. It was really special. You're family now, Margaret said simply. That's what today helped me realize. You're not just someone I helped once, or even just a friend. You're family. The word hit me harder than I expected. Family. I hadn't had that in so long I'd forgotten what it felt like. Margaret, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, but I want you to know something. She turned toward me, her face serious. That night on the bridge, I wasn't just walking my dog. I was walking because I couldn't sleep. My husband had died 6 months before, and I was drowning in grief. Some nights I'd walk for hours just to escape the empty house. I didn't know. How could you? But here's what I need you to understand. You saved me too that night. Helping you, talking to you, it reminded me that life was still worth living, that there were still people who needed me. You gave my grief purpose. I felt tears sliding down my cheeks. I always thought I was just a burden, just some stupid kid you had to save. Never. You were a gift, Sarah. You still are. She reached for my hand. And now I'm asking you something. I'm 78 years old. I won't be here forever. But while I am, I want you to let me be the family you deserve. I want you to come to dinners and holidays. I want you to call me when you're struggling. I want you to know you have a place where you belong. Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper. Yes, I want that. Rachel found us like that, crying and holding hands on the porch. Everything okay out here? Perfect, Margaret said, her voice steady despite the tears on her face. Everything is absolutely perfect. That night, driving home with leftover turkey and pie in containers on my passenger seat, I called my voicemail and listened to the message I'd saved for 15 years. My mother's voice, cold and final. You're not welcome here anymore. Don't call again. I deleted it. Then I called Danny at the diner. Hey, remember how you said if I ever needed help with anything, I should just ask? Yeah, of course. I want to start saving for cooking school. Real cooking school, not just community college classes. Can you help me figure out a budget? Hell yes. Come by tomorrow before your shift. We'll map it all out. Pulling into my apartment complex, I sat in my car for a moment and looked at the building. It was still small and cramped, and had a radiator that clanked at night. But it wasn't a prison anymore. It was just a starting point. Margaret had given me family. Now I was going to give myself a future. January brought Portland's typical misery. Endless rain, gray skies, and cold that seeped into your bones no matter how many layers you wore. It also brought a phone call that made my carefully rebuilt world tilt on its axis. Sarah, it's Rachel. Her voice sounded strained. Wrong. Mom's in the hospital. My stomach dropped. What happened? She fell. She was trying to get something from a high shelf and lost her balance. She hit her head pretty hard. They're running tests now. I'm coming. I was already grabbing my keys, my hands shaking. Sarah, you don't have to. I'm coming. The hospital was bright and sterile, smelling of antiseptic and fear. Rachel met me in the waiting room, her eyes red from crying. Tom sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders. How is she? Conscious, talking. But they think she might have a concussion, and they're worried about internal bleeding. She's 78, Sarah. Falls like this. She didn't finish the sentence. Can I see her? Rachel nodded and led me down the hallway to a room where Margaret lay in a hospital bed, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. A bandage covered the left side of her forehead, and an IV line ran into her arm. Margaret? Her head turned toward my voice. Sarah, you didn't have to come all the way here. Yes, I did. I took her hand carefully, avoiding the IV. How are you feeling? Foolish, mostly. I should have asked Rachel to get that vase down, but I was being stubborn. She squeezed my hand weakly. Don't look so worried. I'm too mean to die. You're not mean. Tell that to the nurse who tried to give me Jell-O earlier. I informed her in no uncertain terms that Jell-O is an abomination. Despite everything, I laughed. There's the Margaret I know. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Sarah, I need you to do something for me. In my nightstand at home, there's an envelope with your name on it. If something happens, nothing's going to happen. If something happens, she continued firmly, I need you to read it. Promise me. Margaret, promise me. I promise. The doctors kept her for 3 days. I spent most of my time at the hospital, calling in sick to work and sleeping in uncomfortable waiting room chairs. Rachel brought me coffee and food, and we talked in that exhausted way people do when they're scared and tired. She talks about you constantly, Rachel said on the second night, both of us nursing terrible vending machine coffee. You know that, right? Half the time I call her, she's telling me something you said or something you two did together. She's important to me, too. I can see that. Rachel studied me over her cup. Can I ask you something? What exactly happened between you two? She said you met years ago, but she won't tell me the details. I hesitated. It wasn't my story to tell, not really. But Rachel deserved to know something. Your mom saved my life once, and now she's doing it again. Rachel's eyes widened. Oh, I see. She reached over and squeezed my arm. I'm glad she found you again. Or you found her. Whichever it was. Me too. Margaret came home on the 4th day with strict instructions to rest and not climb on anything. I took a week off work to stay with her, despite her protests that Rachel could handle it. Rachel has her own family to take care of, I argued. Besides, I'm a better cook than her. That's true, Margaret admitted. She means well, but the woman can burn water. We fell into an easy routine. I'd make breakfast while she listened to audiobooks in her favorite chair. We'd have lunch together, and I'd read her mail aloud. In the afternoons, she'd nap while I meal prepped for the next few days. Evenings were for conversation, sitting by the fireplace and talking about everything and nothing. It was during one of these conversations that Margaret finally told me about her husband. James died of a heart attack, she said quietly, her hands folded in her lap. He was only 52. One day he was fine, and the next he was gone. I was 57, teaching full-time, and suddenly I was alone. I'm sorry. For a long time I was angry. At him for leaving, at God for taking him, at myself for not seeing the signs. I walked at night because I couldn't stand being in our bed without him. That's why I was on the bridge that night. That's why I was there when you needed someone. Grief brought us together. It did. Strange, isn't it? How the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best connections. She turned her unseeing eyes toward me. You know what James would say if he could see us now? He'd say I was supposed to lose him so I could find you. You don't believe that. No, she admitted. I don't believe in destiny or fate, but I believe in choosing to find meaning in our pain. I believe in making something good out of something terrible. That night, lying in Margaret's guest room, I thought about choices and pain and the ways our worst moments shape us. I'd spent 15 years defined by that night on the bridge, by my parents' rejection, by my own despair. But maybe it was time to be defined by something else, by survival, by friendship, by love. My phone buzzed with a text from Danny. Cooking school applications are due March 1st. You ready? I typed back. Getting there. The next morning, I found Margaret sitting at the kitchen table with the envelope she'd mentioned at the hospital. My name was written on it in shaky handwriting, probably written after she'd lost most of her vision. You promised you'd read it if something happened, she said. But nothing happened. You're fine. I'm 78, and I fell and hit my head. Something happened, even if I survived it. She pushed the envelope across the table. Read it now, please. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter, typed in large font, and a check. Dear Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm either gone or incapacitated, and I want you to know some things. First, you are not broken. You never were. The people who told you otherwise were wrong, and their rejection says everything about them and nothing about you. Second, you saved my life just as much as I saved yours. In my darkest moment, you reminded me that I still had purpose, that I could still make a difference. Thank you for that gift. Third, the enclosed check is for cooking school. Don't argue. Don't refuse it. Use it to build the life you deserve. Use it to become the person you already are. You are loved. You are valued. You are enough. All my love, Margaret. The check was for $15,000. I looked up at Margaret, tears streaming down my face. I can't accept this. Yes, you can, and you will. Her voice was firm. That money is mine to do with as I please, and it pleases me to help you. Besides, it's not a gift. It's an investment. When you open your restaurant someday, I expect free meals for life. Margaret, no arguing. Take the money, go to school, make something beautiful. So I did. Ennifer, in a surprising turn, sent a text congratulating me and apologizing again for how things had ended. Glad you're doing well. You deserve it. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either. Some doors needed to close, but they didn't need to be slammed. In May, Margaret had another scare, a minor stroke that left her hospitalized for a week. This time, I didn't just visit. I moved into her house to help Rachel with the recovery. Margaret was frustrated and scared, her speech slightly slurred, her left side weak. This is what getting old looks like, she said one afternoon, tears of frustration rolling down her cheeks, losing pieces of yourself bit by bit. You're still here, I said, helping her with her physical therapy exercises. That's what matters. But for how long? I'm running out of time, Sarah. There's so much I still want to do. So much I want to see you accomplish. Then stick around. You promised me free meals for life, remember? I need you there when I open my restaurant. She laughed, but it turned into a cough. You're going to be brilliant, with or without me there to see it. Don't talk like that. You're going to live forever just to spite death. God, I hope not. I'm tired, sweetheart. So tired. It was the first time she'd called me that, and it broke something open inside me. Rest then. I'll be here when you wake up. By June, Margaret had recovered enough to resume her normal activities, though she moved slower and tired more easily. Rachel and I created a schedule. I'd spend Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evenings with Margaret, and Rachel would handle the other days. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. One evening in July, sitting on Margaret's back porch watching the sunset she couldn't see, she asked me a question I'd been dreading. Have you talked to your parents since that night? No. They made it clear they didn't want contact. Don't you think it's time to try? You're not that scared 17-year-old anymore. You're a woman with a future and people who love you. What if they still reject me? Then you'll survive it, just like you survived it before. But Sarah, you deserve closure. And maybe, just maybe, 15 years has changed them too. I thought about it for days, Margaret's words echoing in my head. Finally, on a Tuesday afternoon in August, I drafted an email to my mother. I rewrote it 17 times before hitting send. Mom, it's been 15 years. I don't expect you to welcome me back or to accept who I am, but I wanted you to know that I'm okay. I survived, and I'm starting cooking school in September. I'm not asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. I just thought you should know that your daughter is alive and building a life worth living. Sarah. I didn't expect a response, but 3 days later my phone rang with a number I'd deleted but still remembered. Sarah? My mother's voice was older, shakier. It's Mom. My breath caught. Hi. I got your email. I don't know what to say except I'm sorry. We were wrong. So terribly wrong. She was crying. Can we talk? Please? We talked for 2 hours. It was messy and painful and incomplete, but it was something. My father got on the phone too, his voice gruff with unshed tears. We've thought about you every day. We were just too proud and too stupid to reach out. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm willing to try talking. That's more than we deserve, my mother said. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment and cried, for the lost years, for the pain, for the possibility of something new. Then I called Margaret. I talked to them. And? It was hard, but it was something. Good. That's all we can ask for. Something. A pause. Sarah, I'm so proud of you. You're facing the things that scare you. You're building bridges instead of hiding from them. I learned from the best. The week before cooking school started, Margaret threw me a small party. Rachel, Tom, the kids, Danny from the diner, even a few regulars from Miller's showed up. Margaret stood in her kitchen, unseeing but smiling, as everyone toasted to my future. To Sarah, she said, raising her glass of sparkling cider, who proves every day that second chances are real and that the bravest thing we can do is keep choosing life. To Sarah, everyone echoed. Later, after everyone had left and I was helping Margaret clean up, she pulled me aside. I need to tell you something, she said. The doctors don't think I have much time left. Maybe a year, maybe less. The stroke did more damage than they initially thought. Margaret, let me finish. I'm not afraid of dying, Sarah. I've had a good life, but I need to know you're going to be okay when I'm gone. I won't be, I said honestly. I'll be devastated, but I'll survive it, because you taught me how. She pulled me into a hug, her thin arms surprisingly strong. That's my girl. On my first day of cooking school, I woke up at dawn, too nervous to sleep. My phone had a text from Margaret, sent at 5 a.m. Today you start becoming who you were always meant to be. Proud of you. Love you. I drove to campus with Margaret's voice in my head, reminding me I was enough. I walked into that building with my heart pounding, surrounded by strangers who would become classmates and friends. And when the instructor asked us to introduce ourselves and explain why we were there, I took a deep breath and told the truth. My name is Sarah Collins. I'm 32 years old, and 15 years ago I almost died on a bridge. But I'm here today because someone cared enough to save me. Not just that night, but every day since. I'm here to build a life worth living. I'm here to make something beautiful. The class was silent for a moment. Then the instructor nodded. Welcome, Sarah. Let's get started. That evening, I visited Margaret and told her about my first day, the overwhelming information, the intimidating knife skills demonstration, the excitement and terror all mixed together. You're going to do amazing things, she said, squeezing my hand. I know it. Will you be there when I graduate? Will you make it that long? "I'll be there," she promised. "In one way or another, I'll be there." As I drove home that night, Portland stretched out before me, the bridges lit up against the dark water, the city lights reflecting off the river, the mountains barely visible in the distance. This city had almost killed me once. Now it was the place where I was being reborn. I thought about that scared 17-year-old standing on the Morrison Bridge, convinced the world had no place for her. I wished I could go back and tell her that she was wrong, that 15 years later, she'd be driving home from cooking school with a future spread out before her like a feast, that she'd have family who loved her, dreams she was chasing, and a life worth living. But I couldn't go back. None of us can. All we can do is keep moving forward, one choice at a time, one day at a time, building something beautiful from the broken pieces. Margaret had saved my life twice, once on a bridge and once in a diner. But more importantly, she'd taught me how to save myself, how to keep choosing, how to believe I was worth choosing. My phone buzzed with another text from her. "Remember, darling, you're exactly who you're meant to be. Never forget that." I wouldn't. I couldn't. Because Margaret had made sure I believed it, and that belief had changed everything. The rain started again as I pulled into my apartment complex. But I didn't mind. I'd learned to love the rain. It reminded me of all the times Margaret and I had sat together, listening to it dance on the roof, talking about everything and nothing. It reminded me that some of the most beautiful things in life come after the storm. I was Sarah Collins. I was 32 years old. I was a culinary student with a future ahead of me. I was loved. I was enough, and I was finally truly alive.